Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished panelists. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all to the third India Supply Chain Leadership Summit in Bangalore. Imagine India in 1947, a fledgling nation, shackled by colonial scars, mocked as the Hindu rate of growth at 3%. Brazil, Mexico, China, others surged ahead, or so the world said, only to stumble into debt traps, hyperinflation, and lost decades. We endured through 1991's crisis, License Raj's chokehold, we clawed forward, building from ashes. Today, as we are near our centennial, behold the miracle. GDP roaring above 8%, fastest among large economies. On a base, vaster than ever. Doors fling open, manufacturing hums, services soar, exports defy gravity. This is no accident. Self-reliance, our sacred mantra, leverages every strength, from semiconductors to solar panels. We manufacture destiny. Yet at this pinnacle stands Make in India, demanding supply chains as unyielding as our resolve. No longer mere logistics, these are the sinews of sovereignty, threading villages to global markets, speed to sustainability, innovation to inclusion. But triumph whispers warnings. Official tallies cheer falling logistics costs, yet P&Ls weep. E-commerce races towards burnout. AI beckons, Amazon own revolt, caution. Women reshape warehouses, promises or posture. Growth tests our sinews, cracks loom in our ports, last mile monsoons. Fellow patriots, the panel is our forge. From macro myths to corridor truths, speeds shadow to ethical AI, readiness to raw urgency. We script the seamless supply chain that cements self-reliance. India has risen once again, now faster, fiercer, we lead. The hour is ours, let's seize it. Official estimates say logistics cost as a share of GDP is coming down, but many companies don't feel that way. What, in your view, explains this gap? Methodology, missing informant sector data, or benefits that are still stuck in pilots and select corridors? Over to you guys.
Hi, good afternoon. So when we talk about logistics cost against GDP, earlier it was measured like 13 to 14%. That was the number what we used to hear, and recently in these studies we heard like it has come down to 7 to 8%. So is this something like really been happened, or simply the numbers which is being projected? So exactly speaking, if we talk about from the manufacturing background, yes, of course, these are part of P&L, and it has been annually been looked into, and for improvements definitely yes, the continuous improvement projects will be done. But as far as reality is concerned on the ground, so even though we spoke about so much investment from central government with respect to various projects in terms of creating the hubs, improving the ports, national highways and all, but when we talk about end-to-end logistics, still lot to be done. So that's where it seems like like whatever percentages are like, we won't get that percentage on our P&L.
There are two things. One is cost and the other is service level. Yes, the infrastructure is improving, connectivity is becoming better, fuel and energy cost, though it's rising, but not to that extent compared to other inflation measures. So it all indicates that the cost of transporting material is generally going down a little bit. But why do companies don't see logistic cost decrease? Is because their service level expectations are continuously going up and up. And that is, of course, getting demanded and defined by the customer. So when you talk about last mile connectivity, you see all this logistics improvement can really be ensured when you have some kind of a full truck load, you use the real good networks, and you use optimized loading, and you need an optimized vehicle and network planning. But when you try to service the last mile at a very short period of time, very high response time, all these equations go for a toss. Then you start working on other metrics, response time, and all those things. And then you'll find the cost shooting up like anything. Then you'll try to keep material closer to the point of consumption, which means you will start increasing your warehousing cost, inventory cost, which you should factor in the logistic cost. All these things counterbalance the benefits which are coming out of transportation. And this is my opinion, and that is where I think the equation is not really working out to that extent. The other thing is, nowadays it is not practical to assume that logistics means only inland transport, right? It's become a global economy. Often than not, you'll find your customers outside India, and more often than not, you'll find your suppliers outside India. So if that is case, then ocean freight and other international logistics also impacts your logistics cost, which I assume companies also measure. And if you see the way it is going, there is no reduction there. In between, it went up abnormally, it came, little settled down, but even now it is far higher than pre-COVID levels. So that's a significant cost, and I think that is also impacting. And that is a result of geopolitics and a lot of other international demand-supply gaps. So these are things which I feel are counterbalancing many of the efficiencies which are getting driven in the country, and still you don't really see logistics cost as a percentage of turnover really dropping to that extent.
Just continuing with what Nilanjan has said, yes, logistics cost is coming down when you are talking about B2B, okay, a lot of optimization happens when it is, when manufacturing to manufacturing happens, okay. But definitely, yes, when we are talking about B2C, where, like Nilanjan said, it's between the cost as well as service, okay, so that is where the challenge comes up. Even when the infrastructure development is happening across India, so we still find challenges as we go deeper into the country, okay? Still, probably we are still stuck with metros and tier 1 cities. Like we saw in one of the slides earlier, the demand is much higher in the rural markets. But are we keeping in pace with the infrastructure development in rural India? According to me, it's no, still. We are still lagging behind, okay? So, but again, the aspirations, the expectations from the rural India is as much as what we see in urban India today, okay? So a person in rural India still wants the product within a short time, okay? Is it possible to deliver? May not be possible. Again, for that you need to develop infrastructure more closer to the market, okay? Again, that increases your cost, it increases your dependency on your service providers. So these are some of the challenges which still we need to address. And that is one of the main factors when it comes to the cost increase, okay? So my own personal experience has been like delivering products, because I come from an industry where we directly supply products to our customers, okay? So, and the reach is so deep that the cost of delivering a product is much higher than the cost of the product itself at times. But still we need to do it because we are committed for the customer deliveries, okay? So, yeah, a lot of things needs to be done, and probably we are on the right track. Hopefully in the next few years we will see a lot of improvements in the infrastructure development in rural India.
All right, so I'll start. Sorry for the bad throat. I don't think any one of us here can answer that question with confidence at the macro level. Possibly we can address that question within our own world. And the reason for that is, we don't have a very credible measurement system to answer that question very confidently. What happens is most of these measurements that I have seen happen at the macro level, and they do not factor in, all the sectors. The reality in the logistics sectors, as we know, is very different. We still have smaller players, a lot of transactions that happen in cash. There are different corridors, there are different industries which deal in this. And some of the decisions, and I've seen the measurements happen at the pilot stage. It doesn't factor in the reality, what happens in the real world. The previous panel talked about demand and supply. I mean, it's a variable thing. You've got to be flexible. You've got to factor in. So I think the need of the hour is to have a very credible system. It'll never be accurate, but for you to have a directional impression about whether it's getting better, it's getting worse, you need to start with something that is credible.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I will play the devil's advocate. So there is still a lot of work that we need to do in terms of logistics. We have seen all the metrics, but on the ground, there is still a lot of dwell time. Even air shipments taking more than 2 or 3 weeks just to get uplifted at Bangalore airport, which we claim to be one of the best in India. So there are still a lot of metrics that we need to really pinpoint to see where some of these inefficiencies are happening and how we can fix those. It might be one-off case, but I would feel like, these are happening more and more. So that is for the air freight. On the sea freight also, we have a lot of port congestion. We have container shortages that we are working with. Over the last 15 years in logistics, I have seen the ups and downs. Some of them are geopolitical, and some of them are, we don't have manufacturing of containers within India. So that is also creating a lot of sustainability issues over the long term. And these are just the regular standard size. If we're talking about high cubes and cold freight, then it's an even bigger story. So that's what I would say.
Ashwani, as I see, aircraft demand is rising tremendously. And what I hear from the news is Boeing is sourcing from India a lot. Can you elaborate on how you're optimizing logistics cost?
So Boeing sources about $1.3 billion every year out of India, and about 60% is manufacturing. And I know everybody in this room would be excited about the aerospace, and in today's world, that's an evolving industry. So a lot of excitement about it. And just to let you know what we deal with, we make smaller parts to the biggest size, the biggest Apache fuselage, the body of that fighter aircraft that you would have seen goes out of India. And by the way, 69% of the parts that we supply out of India, we are the sole source. That means there's no other source in the world. Some of you would have traveled on the single aisle planes, the 737 vertical fin, the tail of the aircraft goes out of India. So you can imagine from smaller parts to bigger parts, we are shipping all kinds of parts here. And that are not standard shipments that happen. So, in terms of the global sourcing, which is very competitive, the landed cost is determined by, the total cost of shipment as well. Now, in today's world, I think a lot of people talked about resilience. So it's no longer just an equation of the cost, but it is also about how you operate and how quickly you ship. So we knew that this is going to decide how much you can source out of India. So we said we had to do something different. And we came up with something called Plan for Every Part, which is a practice that was also picked by the Bain consultants from us. And we did this in Excel. And I think if we had the liberty of AI in a couple of years back, we could have probably used that. But what it meant was for every part that is going out of India, which is in thousands, we created a plan. And the plan was, everybody could relate to in the logistics world. It's about, the mode of shipment. It's about, consolidation. It's about routing. It's about packaging. And, in our world, unlike others, when we say, hey, we prefer air freight or air shipment to sea shipment in most of the cases, people will say, what about the cost? But we figured out a plan, and I can, talk about this for a long time, but we were successfully able to bring the cost down drastically. Now, I won't say what percentage of cost it was as a part of the total value or GDP, because, that's going to be a long debate, but, we're really proud of what we have done here.
If only Indigo also had planned for every part, we would have a full room.
That's for Mr. Singh to consider as a part of his ISCM session.
Definitely. Officialdom proclaims logistics costs shrinking as GDP share, yet boardrooms feel no balm. Methodology is late, informal shadows, or pilots marooned in golden corridors. Your truths reveal not failure, but the imperative to shatter macro myths, for Make in India to etch permanence, we demand corridor confessions, not whispers from Delhi, but lane by lane ledgers of cost and time, a transparency revolution. For Make in India to work, shouldn't we move from the macro narratives to corridor level dashboards, lane-wise costs, and time indices published quarterly? What would it take institutionally and politically to make that level of transparency real?
So, yeah, Make in India, the PM's announced Atmanirbhar Bharat. It's a very important initiative, not just for the economy, but also for our global position and our sovereignty. As you can see, all kinds of geopolitical situations, they invariably point at one thing, is that the more you are self-sufficient and self-reliant, the stronger you are. Having said that, it's become a buzzword, and everybody's talking about it. But like Shanmukh has asked, how do you know whether you're really making in India? How do you measure? Okay, so there are very simple measurements. At the first level is that you see your entire purchase base, and you see how much is purchased in Indian rupees, how much is purchased in foreign currencies, how much comes across the shores of India, how much is coming into India. That's very simple. Like in my company, it's around 65% is domestic, 35% is imported. But when you go deeper into the subject, a lot of other things will come up. For example, some of these items, very high value items, are actually invoiced in India. Actually, they are manufactured somewhere else. And some supplier brings it in India, puts it in a warehouse and does something, and then invoices to you. So does it solve your problem? You're very happy with that measurement saying that, well, 65% is domestic, but it's really not. You are actually still exposed to global disruptions, global cost dominance, whichever way. And even many of these manufacturers, they actually manufacture in India, but they may be assembling, which means kind of a CKD kind of a format, where the material, the components are actually coming from abroad. Again, doesn't really solve the Make in India narrative to that extent. And lastly, even if you are still manufacturing, you will have to look at tier 2, tier 3, tier 4. If you look at developed countries like, the Europe and Japan, or even now Korea, they have built their entire supply chain ecosystem where tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 also largely around in their country or nearby. That's the ultimate goal. That's the true Make in India. But, well, that will take time, and everybody's working towards it. But it is very complex to measure that. I don't have a suggestion, but since I'm talking about it, I urge everybody to think in that direction and find some way to measure that, because that's the true Make in India.
See, Make in India, even though it's a work in progress, but still we are not there still, okay? See, most of our focus is on, again, metros and tier 1s. For example, if you see in the state of Karnataka where we are, other than Bangalore, there are no cities where we have any major manufacturing sector. So unless and until we spread this across to tier 1, tier 2 and tier 3 cities, probably we will not be able to stop the migration from people from there, and definitely the what do you call, the spread is not equal in the country. So and another thing is like basically when we see the entire manufacturing system, ecosystem in India, everything is still driven by the government policies, okay? It's not so easy to do business in India still, the manufacturing setup. Still, India is more of an service-oriented industry. Still, we are not competing globally in the manufacturing sector. For us to be more competitive, so the government has to ace the policies further. Okay, and just for a small example to give, I was reading a few months back that a small cereal set which is imported from China costs much lesser than what is manufactured locally in India. Okay, that to one-fifth, half the cost of what is manufactured in China. So unless and until the government brings in policies where we are able to support small-scale industries, so till then Make in India will not be a success story in India.
Shanmukh, if I may add to that one.
Yeah.
So on this topic, I think we need somebody like manufacturing extension partners. So like how Nilanjan sir mentioned, there is an ecosystem that we are missing here. So even if we have been producing parts for Airbus and Boeing, the raw material is still imported. We don't have the aerospace grade aluminum, forget titanium, Inconel and all these super alloys. But we are missing the basic aluminum parts that we are resorting to importing. And then that adds up the cost of logistics, cost of capital, and then there is all the tariffs and other things that we are currently dealing with. In addition to that, yeah, there is the post-processing or secondary processes. I know Boeing has been developing them in-house, but if there is access for small and medium enterprises to make the parts and then send them to these manufacturing partners, then I think there might be more holistic approach where we can be much better at taking the value chain or more products out of India.
Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, plenty actually. I think as everybody alluded, this Make in India concept is work in progress. I mean, I'll share some positive stories, and I'll probably leave this audience with a case study that we struggled with, when it comes to Make in India. So the previous panel also alluded to, the campaigns like one of the panelists was talking about locomotives. Some things which have been different as far as India tenders are concerned. They have redefined the way the tenders are laid out. Instead of just talking about servicing the locomotive as an example, they talk about availability, which is nothing but a PBL or the performance-based logistics kind of contract. And that is what happens in the aerospace industry also. So there are some changes which are happening which will ease out the process of doing it. But the biggest problem that we see as a global giant is ease of doing business in India, which is beyond infrastructure. It's about the process, which if you just play by the book, I'm sure you'll struggle. So I'll leave you with a case study. We just opened a warehouse in a place called Khurja. It's close to Noida, very close to Jewar Airport. And what went behind it was a lot of thought driven by the regulatory requirements. So as a foreign company, we had to make a decision. And there are multiple options: free trade zone, special economic zone, domestic tariff area. So the question was, where do we open the warehouse? It was driven, and customer helped us make that call. But should it be FTZ or SEZ? So that was one decision to make. The second thing is, as a foreign company, we cannot have assets in India. Therefore, we need to have a local entity that does the business here. Now, when you make that decision, you have to do business with a local entity, with a local customer. Generally, it has to be in Indian rupees. When you do it this in Indian rupees, then you have to think about how the parts will come to India. Not all the parts are getting made here. Then you run into policies like related party transactions, currency exchange, and so forth. Once you get past that, then you realize, and in Noida, just to clear the custom out of the warehouse we had to go to 3 places for signatures physically on the piece of paper. Now you set up a warehouse to serve the customer in hours, not in days, and you take half a day to just get the signatures moving from one place to the other place. Now the government stepped up, we connected with the commissioner of Noida, but I think if you just go by the rules here, you will not be able to do business, and we still do not have a very sound commercial business case to sustain. So we've taken some actions, but I won't disclose what it is so that I can invite thoughts, the lunch break or otherwise. But, just back to this point, we have a long way to go. I'm in the advisory board of the Karnataka government also, and I keep talking to them and reminding them the issue is very different. Make in India is a buzzword. You can talk as much as you want, and unless you ease out the policies and ease of doing business, you won't get there.
Speed crowns kings today, yet whispers of rider graves and scorched earth rises. Have we bartered tomorrow for tomorrow's delivery? As speed, catalog, and volume become the default differentiators in Indian e-commerce, are we missing a bigger conversation? How do you balance customers' expectations for instant delivery with the harder operational questions? Are we driving unsustainable practices, ignoring last mile rider safety, or creating a model where efficiency gains mask growing human and environmental stress? In your view, what should be the real differentiator for the next phase of India's platform growth? Speed alone or a more holistic measure that includes sustainable operations and frontline worker well-being?
I think all you people agree this is technology yuga, right? So we cannot get away with the smart. So whatever you talk about smart bazaar, smart manufacturing, smart logistics, it starts with all smart. So whenever we talk about technology, okay, it's a very good thing in terms of increasing your efficiency, bringing speed and all those things. But when it is used at the right place. So whenever we talk about speed, so ultimately people who are working at the end, who is suffering for this, if it is not being taken care, for example, the stewardship. Are we, really looking at the well-being of people in terms of, asking only speed, deliver fast, we have to meet the customer expectations. So unless, so a lot of people talk about, like end-to-end logistics, last mile and all those things. Where exactly it is pitching in is the connectivity. So there are major ports, but how many ports from where in India we are operating with, and we have very good infrastructure connectivity end to end. I think we have to think about, definitely yes, we have to think about well-being when we ask about speed.
So again, I think to answer your question, it's true that if you put pressure on people and rely on them to deliver fast, it could have reverse impact. A lot of people said that sales responsibility to deal with customer, but in our world, the salespeople are the first one to throw us under the bus in front of the customer if there is a problem with any of the parts. So we deal with the customer. We understand what their pain points are and what they're looking for. And I can tell you, it's whichever industry you come from, the customers would expect the service the very next hour or next day. And that's what happens with us. So how do you take care of this human factor that you're talking about? One, you got to define the expectations quite well. Is the expectation deliver the part at the fastest speed? Or is the expectation that I need a guaranteed delivery timeline? So we are setting the expectations very differently. So that's point number one. Number two, this cannot work just by relying on human beings. And for those of us who have come from Six Sigma background also have learned that, you have to think about the process, not about whether a person is making a mistake or he's responsible. Even in the logistics world, there are several trade-offs possible. And we use the several trade-offs, cost versus cycle time, air shipment versus, the sea shipment. And we also have situations where some of our defense equipment has to go in the US flag carriers. So it's not easy to get those ships here. So we deal with situations where you got to make trade-off, define the expectations clearly. But till the time the operational efficiency improves, till the time the process improves and the policies improve, I don't think we can set an expectation which is beyond a point. And we are very, very candid with the customer. We don't put that much pressure on the people. But practically, you all know, we know, that when it comes to taking the last mile, it's the person who is carrying the part is under pressure.
I think it's about sustainability of the whole process. What happens to the expectation of the speed or the pressure for time? Of course, a customer will be happy if you deliver fast. But time and speed is not the main thing. Consistency is important. If you make the customer expect, well, can't be done in one day, but I will consistently do it in 3 days. After some time, the customer will get used to it and he will be happy. Of course, you have a responsibility to step by step reduce 3 days to 2 days and 1 day. But having this heroic attempt that we must crash lead times, we must become faster, and then, coming to Six Sigma, you have those 1 in 10 cases which fall out. You see, customers always forget the times when you complied. They will always remember the time when you failed. So I think consistency is much more important. Step by step, we have to raise the bar until we are confident that what we are promising is sustainable in terms of delivery, in terms of even cost, whether we can afford it, and in terms of safety. Till that time, we should not unnecessarily try to promise too much.
To add to that one, yeah, we have consistently been getting these scorecards from our customers, and then we have to match it up with our own scorecards. And there is a huge gap, whereas some of these urgent so-called priority shipments have landed at the customer, but they have been sitting in their warehouse for more than a few days. So here we are, trying to put pressure on everybody from operations, production, delivery, logistics to make sure this part reaches there before end of Friday, right? Friday 5 p.m. But it's been sitting there since Friday, and then, counting the number of days, they haven't even touched it till the next Thursday. So those are some of the unsustainable expectations that the customers have been pushing a lot. And I think as suppliers, we have to, make sure that we are consistently delivering. And also we wanted to make sure that we are consistently communicating that we could deliver based on our lead time. But you have to make sure that you place the POs on time, you give us the forecast, and then you keep up with your end of the bargain.
Today in e-commerce and quick commerce industry, basically, there is a consistency, okay? So when they say 15 minutes delivery, it happens, most of the time it happens in 15 minutes, but at what cost? Okay, it's at the risk factor, safety factor of the people who come and deliver, the people who are working at the background, the kind of stress levels they go through. Is it still worth to commit something or making... the current model has made people lazy also. Because I remember personally we used to go once in a month to do a grocery shopping. Today we don't do that now. Most of the groceries are ad hoc planning. Today morning, we get up in the morning and then we decide what we need to buy, knowing very well that it will be delivered in 15 minutes. Is this definitely it could be a sustainable model, but in terms of consistency, but is it cost effective? Is it a necessity? Well, that's something which we need to question. But again, at what cost? The people who come and deliver, safety factor, not only for them, but for the people who are there on the roads, okay? So we have seen so many accidents happening because of the delivery boys who drive the vehicles rash, okay? But again, it's a balance between economy as well as sustainability as well as employment. So government has to come out with certain policies on these. Unless and until then, probably it will be the way we are operating.
From shadows of exclusion emerge women-led bastions. Safety reimagined, ergonomics etched in equity. We now see a rise in women-run warehouses and all-women sites. From your vantage point, is this changing how operations are designed? Safety, shift patterns, ergonomics, automation choices, or is it largely a branding story with the same old processes underneath?
Okay. So, go ahead. That's like a favorite subject, So we always talk about when diversity then come to women. We all agree. But when we are coming to ground reality, how many people we agree, reporting to a woman, always something starts in our mind, right? So it's not that, now it is not like that. So really their participation has gone up like anything in terms of, sectors. But again, when we talk about, manufacturing, logistics and all, yes, of course, so we have single digit percentage participation. High is like, textiles, IT and all those things. But when you talk about, women, yes, of course, now even recent labor law says like, they can now work in, any shifts in any, areas. That's been clear now. Only thing, when it comes to, then we have to look at what is the basic infrastructure we have been provided. Is that being abundant? So when we talk about, a big MNCs, yes, of course. When we go to Tier 2, Tier 3 and all, is that really, happens? Are they having really what is the need for them to continue their work on day-to-day basis? So that's where the question rises. So definitely, yes, participation has gone up. Everybody are welcoming. Only thing we have to look at the infrastructure further.
So I think, Shanmukh, you kind of triggered, or you subtly tried to ask that, is it for real or is it kind of a buzzword, right? So let me answer. It's a little sensitive and a debatable subject. I'm saying this from personal experience without naming anybody, any organization, anything. I feel it's a mix of both. You see, the necessity of having diversity, not only in terms of gender, in terms of race or ethnicity or everything, has its own positives, right? We as a human race are built naturally in a way. So the way our society is structured, if your workplace is not structured that way, it is likely to create imbalance. It is also likely to not get the best out of the human potential that is possible. That's a very broad kind of statement, and that's why people should encourage, the ratios, whether it be gender or any other kind of groups, the way it is naturally built in society. Now, are organizations really thinking that way? Are they viewing women or any other kind of diversity positively, that, we need the ratio to be fine because we need to be more productive, we need to be more progressive, we need to have our KPIs better? I'm not very sure. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm sounding a little negative, because sometimes it seems to be, management seem to be under pressure that, well, this is an index or indices which is not working so well and we need to improve. Okay, because sometimes all these things do play a role, and I urge all companies to really view this in the true way, that you need to deeply believe that this is important for you. The other problem is many of these things are top driven, which means someone at the top has said, well, your ratio has to be this much. And everybody is working overtime, including especially HR. So what do? They have a challenge, you see, getting women into manufacturing sector for that matter. It's not very easy. You may have the desire to have women, but are there enough capable, willing women who wish to work in your kind of environment, in your kind of workplace? Maybe you don't have enough applicants, so you have a challenge. And then they try all kinds of things. They go to a college, get trainees, and then shore up the ratio. Are you really doing justice to the concept? Not truly, maybe in a very remote way. So deep inside, the management has to internalize and really feel for it. And not only management, all the way from top to bottom, the lowest manager has to genuinely believe in it and want it. And when all these things happen completely 100%, then all these issues like what he was talking about, infrastructure, support structure, policies, all these things will automatically improve and they will change. Because you see, you need to understand that men and women are not built the same way. there are different expectations and there are different necessities that both the genders have. And as long as you can bring a conducive atmosphere to all, everybody will perform well.
All women warehouses proliferate, reshaping shifts, safety, automation. Inclusivity's fire now tempers AI's forge, lest it hammers right into dust. Amazon's own cry warns, warp speed, AI devours jobs, climate conscience. India's vanguard, over 1,000 Amazon employees, including many who actually build and run its AI systems, have warned their leadership that a warp speed, all cost justified push into AI is already harming jobs, workplace conditions, and even the company's own climate commitments. For India's supply chain and manufacturing leaders who are also racing to embed AI into planning, logistics, and shop floor execution, what safeguards of stewardship are non-negotiable? How will you ensure that AI is deployed with transparent worker participation, clear climate guardrails, and accountable governance instead of becoming a productivity hammer that quietly erodes labor rights, safety, and sustainability in the name of competitiveness?
So I can go. So see, in my mind, there are two core issues that we need to look at. One is the operational issue, which has, how you run the business, infrastructure, policies, and so forth. The second piece is how do you provide solutions driven by data. So when it comes to AI, in my view, people are talking about the second one that I talked about. But that is definitely going to help you because, there are a lot of agentic AI solutions in work today. We've seen a lot over here. We talked about, I think all of us talked about the credible measurement system and then analytics beyond a point. So I think there are a lot of things that can be improved using AI and AI tools. But the bigger problem in my mind, and others may choose to differ also, so I'm speaking from my experience, I'll say 30% can be resolved with what we say as data analytics and AI. The 70% has to be controlled by people, policies, the government, and so forth. Unless you ease out some of the policies and ease of doing business here, AI will help, but the scope will be limited.
If I may add, Shanmukh, one more thing.
Yes, please.
Yeah, on the topic of AI, I think we are a little far, at least in the Indian manufacturing arena. I'm sure some of the big ones are implementing AI like Tata and Boeing and Saffron. But when we come to the tier 1, tier 2 supply base, which is in India, small and medium enterprises, there is still quite a lot of inefficiency and gaps that they have to implement. There are some cases not even implementing ERP systems effectively. They might have one, they will use that, but that's pretty much it. They are not living by it. It's not like a single version of facts. So we still have long ways to go to catch up to AI, especially in the Indian manufacturing ecosystem.
I think I go with Ashwani. So if you see, AI is definitely going to help us, okay? But whenever we talk about implementation, so definitely investment will come into picture. And what is that benefit we are going to get it in terms of when we compare to our labor? So if I compare with respect to any other countries like Australia versus India, what is the per hour rate? It's huge difference. So still it takes some time in India to implement AI, but definitely yes. Going forward, you have to adopt because these routine jobs can be eliminated by AI, and you can put that particular capacity or whatever capability into other things where we can make things, we can invent things.
Basically, in our kind of industry, AI definitely helps because it helps us to understand the customer behavior and customer pattern of buying. Okay, when the base is large with customers, some millions of people buy. Okay, so it's very difficult to do a manual analysis: who's buying, who stopped buying, and all these things. So with technology improving, it becomes more predictable. Like uh, whom to reach out to in case if, for example, if in an e-commerce industry, if I stop buying a product, okay, automatically there is a prompt in the system like you have bought this last time, this is due for you to buy, okay. These things definitely it's going to help businesses to improve their visibility to the customer as well as understanding the customer behavior, patterns, and in turn prompting the customer to buy the product, okay. These are some of the tools which are definitely going to help us in future also.
This stewardship steels us for the decade's road or exposes fractures. 8% growth thunders, manufacturing, services ablaze, structurally primed or assets flogged to ruin. Where yield first? With GDP growing above 8% and both manufacturing and services firing together, are India's logistics network structurally ready for a sustained high growth decade? Or are we just running our existing assets harder? Where will the first cracks show if growth stays as this pace?
Okay, are we ready infrastructurally for the growth for the next decade? Well, according to me, we are still not there in terms of logistics network. Okay, I can only talk about my area of expertise, that is nutraceutical part of it. Even today when we talk about the nutraceutical, we still don't have basic infrastructures also to support the growth. Okay, the cold chains are not ready with there are not many cold chains available. There are not many service providers who can give you cold chain vehicles. Even the ones who provide are exorbitantly high. Okay, this definitely eats into your profitability when you start using it. Unless and until you operate your own systems, or if you are trying to hire services from the market, we do not have sufficient service providers who cater to the food industry according to the food regulators' requirements. Okay, there are many companies who operate warehousing services, logistics services for food industry, but are they complying with the food regulator norms? Most of them not. 80% of them fail in case if they go through an audit by a food regulator. Okay, so we are still not there yet. But again, yes, definitely the government needs to intervene, yes out the policies, because a lot of laws are ambiguous. Some of the laws are impractical to be implemented. The government implements certain policies, but they don't know how to navigate through. For example, I can give recently there was a changes in the GST laws. Suddenly they came out and said that food, especially some of the food items were at 18%, you change it to 5%, some of them were at 5%, you bring it down to 0%. And they told you have to relabel the entire products earlier. This is the policy they came out with. But there are some products which are hardly 5 rupees. Even to do a relabeling, it will cost 10 rupees to relabel. So they had to reverse the policy again. So they come out with a policy, they themselves don't know what to do it, and then they reverse the policies. This confuses the industry. So the government has to be more proactive in understanding what the industry requirements are, and then they have to come out with a policy. Similarly, the infrastructure, what is required for a particular industry, they have to develop those industries. Because I was reading a column somewhere. In China, out of nowhere, they constructed a metro station. Nobody knew why the metro station came up. But over a period of time, the entire infrastructure came out around the metro station. So we have to also have, the government has to have the foresightness of seeing what the industry needs, and based on that the policy needs to be developed. Probably many of the time the policies are made and then they ask the industry to comply with the policy.
So I think from my perspective, things are getting better, but I don't think we are ready to support the kind of growth aspirations we have. And I'll pick 2 examples. You know, we've lost, while we take pride in saying we do $1.3 billion every year, we have lost many opportunities with Indian suppliers because of the shipment problems or the logistics problem. So we host a lot of US visitors, and one thing they notice very clearly, our infrastructure is a problem. And if you can't move in the cars and, on the road, how can you move the aerospace parts from suppliers to the port and then, into US? So we lost multiple opportunities. I do not know how to convince them. We figured out some way, taking shelter of packaging, to counter the difficult situation there. So that's one struggle. Unless the infrastructure gets better, I think we're going to struggle. The second part is the compliance part of it. If you had to work outside of India, particularly with United States, there are certain things which you have to comply with. And some of you would have heard about CTPAT, Customs and Trade Partnership Against Terrorism. So with the current geopolitical situation and so forth, right now it's an optional thing, but we face several US customs audit here with suppliers. I don't think we have the right processes across the industry to handle those kind of extensive audits. So it is not just about, getting savvy to do business within the country. I think it's very important to recognize doing business internationally is a different ballgame. And unless we clean up our processes and infrastructure and policies, we'll continue to stay within a band of growth, not beyond.
Your example about the American guy reminds me of something I read recently. There was an American logistics CEO in India, and all she had to say is India's logistics is already in 2030, which I agree with. But if you had to be brutally honest, what is the single most urgent need of the hour to make logistics in India truly seamless end-to-end? Better infrastructure, data, transparency, policy, alignment, or operating discipline on the ground? Please keep it short. One word for this one. Each one of you.
All put together.
One single one, but
See, everything is
Priority.
important, okay?
Priority.
So compliance is important,
It
operating
is.
gas is important, compliance, everything is important. Whatever you say, everything needs to be there.
Nothing
When you say
denied, but
India
what-
is already at 2030, it could be only related to the deliveries, okay? 15-minute delivery. Otherwise, we are nowhere in 2030. Probably in US, you'll not get it in 15 minutes. In Europe, you'll not get. For them, it's rocket science, getting something in 15 minutes. India, it's become a common thing in metros at least, okay? Only there we are in 2030. In other logistics areas, probably we are still in 1990s.
No, so actually it is all of it. But if you're forcing us to choose,
I am. Because
so
my
I think it
next
is
question also
I think
is
it's
a forcing.
infrastructure in priority. I think still a lot of work is left.
I think it is a chicken and egg story. So it is interconnected. But again, if you see today, what is that happening in industry, along with the government policies and all, definitely government is pushing towards bringing good policies in terms of supporting industries. I think yes, of course. So ground reality the one which I see which has to get improved. So people have to first accept and move on so that we can utilize.
For me, it's ease of doing business and everything comes under that. You can't tell the customer, okay, I'll give you the parts cheaper, but you have to live with the bad roads and there is a risk of moving the parts. So I think it's all of the above. It can't be one or the other and should get under the umbrella of ease of doing business.
I would say all of the above. Yeah. So without the industry, the government is not there. Without the policies, the industry cannot work cohesively. So we all have to push more pressure to the government to improve the infrastructure, which you might have seen in Bangalore recently, the civic opposition for the roads and the software companies and all the things that you have seen in the news. So I think at some point even the industry is going to demand that. So we need to have more transparency, and then the actual policies need to work for the industry.
Only the noise happened, nothing happened on the ground.
Okay, now I'm confused whether to ask you guys the next question, but here it is. In one word again, where will the biggest push really have to come from? Government, industry, customers, or technology?
Government.
I agree with you. Because the government has to take the lead.
Yeah, government, no doubt.
They're not in the room, so we can blame it on them.
But the government says technology.
Yeah.
I heard Piyush Goyal bash quick commerce the other day.
Until the
Not for
policies
having-
are aced out, okay, the industry cannot act much, okay. See, because there are so much of laws and regulations for a simple industry to be started.
India is in spite of the gods. Sorry to say that.
Yeah, it's government. Classic example is again, if people are from Bangalore, they know like, Pinya versus Nelmangla industrial area. So how many companies started in Nelmangla? I mean, that's how it goes like. So first step is always to take government.
Government.
From the macro illusions of falling logistics costs, whether methodologies mirages, informal shadows, or corridor-bound pilots, to the clarion call for lane-wise dashboards, etching Make in India's permanence, you have eliminated the path. Whether panelists champion Niti mandates or declared federal fractures, one truth endures: granularity fuels sovereignty. E-commerce's speed frenzy, rider perils, and sustainability plea met holistic visions or defiant velocity, yet all converge on well-being as the true differentiator. Women-led warehouses, branded gestures, or ergonomic revolutions underscore inclusivity's power. AI's warp speed, temptations, echoing Amazon's revolt, demand your non-negotiables, worker voices, climate convenience, governance steel, pilots or pragmatism be damned. At 8%, growth gauntlet, networks strain, ports cracking, last mile buckling, or Gati Shakti's grit prevailing. Brutal verdicts, crowned infrastructure, data, policy, or discipline as the urgent flame. And that one word, primer mover, government, ignites debate, but unites us in shared resolve. India, from regrets, shadow, to self-reliance summit, your wisdom forges supply chains not just seamless, but sovereign. The sinews are ours to strengthen. Carry this fire, act, innovate, lead. Thank you.